Adaptations in the Wide World of Frogs, Lesson 9. Learning targets. I can write the middle of a Porcoy tale that describes the central problem and how the character responds to the problem. Go ahead and read that back out loud. I can use dialogue and descriptions in my Porcoy tale to show rather than tell the response of the characters to the situations. What is dialogue? How does it help us understand characters? I want you to keep that in mind as we read the next slide. So how does dialogue help us? So if we look at this first box, this is without dialogue. So follow along as I read it aloud. The frog really liked his leaf, and he told his friend that he liked it. The friend agreed that it was a very nice leaf. Okay, that's a fine story, but now let's look at it with the dialogue in this box. I found this leaf in the pond. Isn't it amazing? The frog said to his friend. Yes, the frog replied. It is totally amazing. Can I share it with you? Ooh, does the dialogue show us and not tell us how the characters are feeling and what they're saying? Yes. Narrative texts are about real or imagined experiences. How do today's learning targets connect to what we know about narrative texts? They also have a clear sequence of events that makes sense and is easy to understand. These texts have a beginning that establishes the situation and introduces the characters and/or narrator. A middle that describes the central problem and explains how the characters respond to the problem. An ending that has a resolution to wrap up the problem and explains the message or purpose of the narrative. Why the poison dart frog is so colorful. Let's read this aloud together. And while we're reading aloud, I want you to keep in mind, what do you think is the central problem here? How did the character respond to the problem? And where is the problem introduced in the story? So find this section. It can be found in your workbook, or you can read along with me here. One day, Rana was playing a hunting game with his frog friends. He accidentally knocked over one of the torches that lit up the cave. The torch fell onto the dried grass Rana used for a bed to set it on fire. How does the description of the grass show readers rather than telling them? Yeah, it describes that the grass is so dry that it easily caught on fire. Where in the story do we see the character response to the problem? Yep, let's keep reading to see. Here it is. Help! Please help me, Rana screamed. He knew he had to find a way out. He ran for the entrance, but it was in flames. He reached down to pick up Drab, Ash, and Gray, but his little friends hopped away from him. He followed them, but they just hopped more quickly, deeper and deeper into the cave. How did Rana feel about this situation? And how do you know? Yes, he felt frantic because it says in the passage that he was screaming, "Help, please help me." How does the dialogue show rather than tell what Rana's response was? Yeah, you can picture him. It says he's screaming it, and it tells you exactly what he screamed. How is the dialogue punctuated here? Yes, it's punctuated. It starts with a quotation mark, and then after the dialogue, we see a comma, and then we close with a quotation mark. Narrative text may use dialogue to show how characters react to events. Help! Please help me, he screamed. The words spoken should have quotation marks around them. A comma at the end inside the quotation mark before the rest of the sentence. So if it's not a complete thought or there's more, you put a comma. Sometimes you might see a period or an exclamation mark or a question mark there too. So you need to have some kind of punctuation mark right before you have your closed quotation mark. So find this section. Rana thought, how strange, it seems to be getting cooler. Then he saw a giant crack in the cave wall. Rana scooped up the 3 frogs and wriggled through. First, Rana took a deep breath of fresh air. Then he bent down to see if Drab, Ash, and Gray were all right. How do we know what's going on with Rana? Yeah, there's dialogue to show what the thoughts were going through his head. How does this show rather than tell? Well, we know exactly what he was thinking. How is it punctuated here? Yes, we notice instead of having a comma here, we have a period, but we start with the quotation mark, we have a period, and then we end with a quotation mark. So, narrative texts are about real or imagined experiences. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They may use dialogue to show how characters react to events. Help! Please help me, he screamed. Rana thought, how strange, it seems to be getting cooler. So review what you've got. So you're going to go look at your workbook, your white and purple workbook, and review what is on pages 18 and 19. The 2 middle sections. Okay? And then you're going to you look from 18 and 19 and then go to 29 and 30. And you're going to transfer your outline on 18 and 19 into complete sentences on 29 and 30. And I want you to try using dialogue. Okay? So make sure the middle of your story starts from where the beginning leaves off. So where we started it the other day. So on 27, we introduced the story. 28, we talked about the characters. And make sure that 29 and 30 are continuation. If you finish early, reread your story, revise and edit your work. And since if you're doing this because you were not in class, work with an adult or an older sibling at home to read your story aloud to make sure it makes sense. How'd you do? I croaked when I was acting it out. So look at your narrative writing checklist that we had up here, which is on pages 25 and 26. And you're going to go ahead and mark yes or Y for yes or an N for no, whether you feel you achieved those goals on these standards on the checklist. On W3.3a, my story has a central problem. W3.3d, I resolve the problem at the end of the story and wrap it up. W3.3c and L3.6, I use words to show when the events happen. W3.3b and L3.3, I use dialogue to show the reaction of the character to events. I describe what the characters are doing, thinking, or feeling. So let's go back to our learning targets and think about if we have achieved them. I can write the middle of a Pourquoi tale that describes the central problem and how the character responds to the problem. Did you do that? If you didn't, that's okay, but you can go back and fix it right now. I can use dialogue and descriptions in my Pourquoi tale to show rather than tell the response of the characters to the situations. If you did not use dialogue, go back and add that. Now, how do you feel about doing these things now? Okay, our new why question. You're going to think of a new why question to fill out your exit ticket on page 33. So your new why question could be is, why do frogs have spots? Why don't frogs have ears like we have? It could be anything you're curious about why. So think about your new why question and record it on page 33 in your workbook. If you don't have your workbook, you can do it in Seesaw. And take a picture and make sure it gets uploaded to Seesaw.